5 years ago, when City Talk was nearing its 100th edition, we featured the Gibraltar Chronicle in anticipation of its 200th anniversary. Things, no doubt, will have changed. Some of the staff and management is different today, but essentially, the organisation and its objectives will remain the same. The City Talk you're about to see takes a good look at how and why one of the world's oldest English newspapers survives. We take this opportunity to wish our media colleagues a happy 200th anniversary. Give us this day our daily paper is not a prayer, more a heartfelt sigh of relief when another batch of chronicles comes off the folding machine. Our daily paper will be 200 years old on the 15th of May 2001, just 5 years from now. It's the second oldest daily in Europe and has been published without interruption hitherto. With a charter based on the Irish Times, the future of the Chronicle is enshrined in a constitution upheld by the paper's current owners. That's the Chronicle staff. Yes, here is Gibraltar's first and most successful staff management buyout, which came about at a time when the winds of change blew decolonisation and progress all over the rock.
It was a time that I think most of us in Gibraltar generally started to do things differently. The old ways did not suffice anymore. We had new circumstances, a fully open frontier, which we didn't have in the past. It also coincided in our own experience with important changes in the structure of the newspaper, its ownership, etc. I mean, before we came under the Garrison Library setup, and it was about that time in which I led a management staff buyout of the paper, which required a new style of doing things. The paper, as you rightly say, was four pages. We thought that to remain as the undisputed sort of daily newspaper in Gibraltar and to be able to fend off any other possible competition, we needed to build it up. I mean, anybody could have started a 4-page paper and given us some problems. So the process started then. It was a process in which what we did was basically we had to restructure our work practices. We have a staff of about 40, not many more today than there were then. So the way we sort of planned out things was we keep on the same people, but doing much more work, all of us doing much more work than hitherto. And basically, proof of the pudding is in the heat, it's basically worked. The paper is now a much bigger newspaper, which a lot more content of interest, I think, to both Gibraltar and Costa readers. It has improvements such as colour. It sells much more than it did, and one can't complain.
There was a time when the Chronicle's independence was thought to be questionable, as the MOD had a firm grip on its policy-making board at the Garrison Library.
Of course, the paper was started by the military back in 1801.
You had constraints?
Yes. No, I mean, I don't think that by the time I've been involved with the paper, there have been no constraints.
Not perhaps editorial constraints, but perhaps other constraints, commercial constraints.
Commercial constraints,
yes.
Business constraints, yes, acceptable. But never, in my time in the paper, has the editorial input of the paper been sort of mooted by anybody or controlled by anybody, apart from the journalists working for the paper. Now, of course, I mean, the advantage now is that we are independent and responsible for how the paper operates and how well or badly it does. And it allows us to have no constraint in saying things, all right, we want to sell newspapers in Spain, so long as we make it work commercially, there's nothing to stop us.
A daily exists only for what it is, a vehicle to carry news, views and publicity to readers who will only be interested in it for one day, after which it becomes yesterday's news. All this work just for one day. But how is the paper conceived and born?
It's a continuing process in which one might have a couple of feature articles that are planned to go in a day in advance. But by and large, it is a process which starts with, I would say, 20, perhaps 24 blank pages every day. Then starts the process of deciding how to fill it in, depending on what major news items have come in, not just from the local scene. As you know, we also published up-to-date news from the UK, which is done with the help of the Press Association. The news that we get from UK are exactly on the same subjects as you would read in the same day's Telegraph or Express. I mean, we are switched on continuously to the Press Association service, which also feeds into some of the UK nationals. So this is where there's room for further expansion as far as we're concerned. I mean, we could produce technically, instead of the 24 we're doing today or the 32 we might do on and off, we could produce 40 or 60. Technically we could do it.
Well, the girls come in, Natalie and Alison come in probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, and they've already got a feed from the advertising from downstairs, and they start putting the advertising into the layout. And depending on how much advertising we get, depends how many pages we have to do. Invariably it's 24 nowadays. And therefore from 9 o'clock when I come in, we start working out the balance of the paper, trying to keep the local news as near to the front as possible, the advertising and the financial news to the back of the paper, and the features in the middle somewhere, and we gradually fit it up from the middle outwards. We're aiming for deadlines because people further down the line than us are expecting to see proof-ready copies stuck on plates before 11 or 12 in the morning, so that the whole of the system can be phased into the system down in the machine room. So they start getting pages from 11 o'clock, 11:30. By 1 o'clock we've done most of it, and in the afternoon we're left with perhaps the sports scheme, the UK news stream coming off the modem from Dominic, late advertising in the daytime, and then we're finishing off the last pages at about 4 to 5 in the afternoon.
Well, it's a continuous process, obviously. One of the things that people aren't always aware is that we have deadlines through the day. So the printing has to go on throughout the day to make use of the machinery we have, otherwise you'd have a lot of people working very hard at night and you wouldn't be making good use of the machinery. Obviously some stories take a long time to develop. You might be working on an idea or a source, something you've heard, and it could go on for weeks. Then there are the scheduled ones, the things that happen, an announcement by the Chief Minister or a press conference called or whatever it is. And so it's a continuous process really, and on a normal day I'd say that we wind up operations by about 7:30. It's rarely that something happens after that which we can just catch the paper in time before it goes to bed. Obviously, if we have previous notice, like an election night or something special, we can hold the paper. But you look at costs and other considerations when you take those decisions.
We have a variety of sources. You know, we have all the political parties, the government departments, the trade unions, you know, the police, the courts. These things are areas which we check on a daily basis, and these are normally sources for stories. And then obviously things you hear in the street, you know, people always, I mean, obviously being such a small place, everybody knows you're a journalist, and if somebody hears about something, you know, word of mouth, it gets back to you. So I mean, basically we have a wide variety of sources for our stories.
As you know, sports is played 7 days a week in Gibraltar, and there are 25 sports played 52 weeks of the year. And including your colleagues, Dennis and George, we go and look at most of them throughout the weekend usually. And then by the time Monday comes, I have a good idea of what the more important stories are, and I start feeding them into the paper through the week, trying to hit certain deadlines. Like people expect to see the football in on Thursday because the last big match is Tuesday, and it takes me Wednesday to put it together. And then the other things work around that. And on the Friday, I'm thinking about the hockey from the previous week and the hockey for the upcoming weekend. And then we work through the week like that. I mean, I get the basketball comes in from outside, so that's a Friday thing. And on a Saturday, I try to get as many fixtures in as possible. And I look for a feature article, preferably with photographs for the Monday. And then I gradually work that way through the week.
Well, in terms of actual sort of news reporting and news gathering, it's basically 2 of us as full-time reporters, and there's 2 full-time photographers. Then on the top end of that, you've got Francis, who's the managing editor, who will then obviously look at big stories, and I'll be in discussion with him on that, and he'll writes the editorials later in the day. Then there's also the contributors who come to, say, from the Costa del Sol, Ghislaine Hathaway, the sports reporters, who are all part-time contributors, but who all feed into the same operation.
It makes sense for a business to have a mixed economy. It provides protection. When one sector is flagging, another can be booming. The Chronicle's economy is three-pronged, like Neptune's trident. The daily circulation of some 4,000 is supported by copious advertising, and the printing works also carry out commercial printing on a large scale, so that growth is sustainable and more or less guaranteed by sheer effort. However, maintaining the pace is not without its worries.
The combination of both does present a hectic situation for all of us. I think the ones who are directly engaged with the newspaper and the ones who are directly working with exclusively with the printing works, and of course there's a lot of intermarriage in all that. We need the printing machines for the paper, the printing works needs the paper to sort of fly the flag. So it's a question of trying, teamwork is of the essence, and of course having the right equipment and machinery. That has been our greatest difficulty up to now. Making sure that in the papers, in expanding the newspaper, we were not eating into machine time, which was reserved for commercial jobs. The way we have eventually solved the problem is to have two sets of machinery and equipment. So you would see now that we have color printers, which basically work for the paper exclusively, and another set of machinery that works for the commercial printing side of things. Our strategy in acquiring new plant and machinery over the past few years is based on the thinking, which I think is shared with official sectors and other commercial sectors in Gibraltar, that printing, commercial printing, is one of the areas for expansion in Gibraltar which can provide much needed job opportunities for the youth. We already operate various schemes in conjunction with the Employment and Training Board, and we have been taking on quite a number of apprentices over the past few years, who within a couple of years will be taking on fully fledged jobs within the Chronicle. Now, what is imperative for this plan to succeed is that we get it through to the community as a whole that printing can be done locally, that at least the Chronicle has the equipment, sufficient equipment to be able to do most sophisticated printing jobs, which goes hand in hand with the development of a finance centre in Gibraltar. Finance centre produces paper that needs to be printed in large quantities, and this is the sort of market where we want to move into. It requires, as I say, the conviction locally that you want to have products which are made in Gibraltar. This is what we're aiming for.
The local media's manna from heaven has got to be the political stories. They arrive ready written and are more or less guaranteed to catch the eye, because here everything is political. But do we perhaps place too much emphasis on politics?
I think because probably since the seeds were sown in the mid-50s, we have become addicted to politics, and through no fault of our own. We are a place which is to some extent uncertain about what's going to happen. We always have this idea that we've got to resolve the Gibraltar problem. And because we have that feeling, and because politics is around us every day, we discuss it all the time. And I'm quite convinced that if say last week we'd run a newspaper for 3 days that didn't touch on politics at all, we'd have been woken up very abruptly by a story in the Mail or Sunday or somewhere else. The fact is that politics are there because of the situation with Spain, because we are a very small community isolated from Great Britain, which is at the end of the day the power that has been the colonial power for a long time. We're bound to be political, and we have our own political system. We have a House of Assembly, and therefore we run as a newspaper on the basis of being a national daily and a local daily. And therefore, a day in the life of one of us could be meeting Herd in the afternoon, having spent the morning talking to someone who has a problem with the sewers outside New Passage or wherever it is.
Well, my own personal view on this subject is that the news in Gibraltar are far too politicized. I mean, I cannot remember an instance where a political story hasn't captured the headline news in every media, whether television or written. But this is perhaps a reflection of the type of society in which we live, where there are many, innumerable political and economic interests, sometimes conflicting, and obviously there are many people with, you know, political access to grind, and obviously this is reflected in the media. I mean, this is inevitable. Also, I think that perhaps a strange situation, you know, the strange situation in which we live in, makes politics our daily bread, you know, to the point that perhaps we can become oversensitive or obsessive sometimes with the politics. I mean, it is a criticism I often hear, that there's too much politics in the news. I mean, my own view is that I would like to see an input from, you know, like culture and other types of non-political stories grabbing the headlines, you know. But I mean, obviously, I mean, we have to cater for the demand.
The nature of this business is such that working for a daily paper is no picnic. But here at the Chronicle, the staff seem to take the pressure in their stride. Perhaps because they all have individual responsibilities as owners and custodians of this institution, all systems continue moving forward and nothing stands in the way of progress, with one or two notable exceptions. Message-carrying conveyances, such as this contraption called El Cubo, relay copy and instructions to the layout and photography departments across the patio. The system has never failed. It's an energy saver and a direct descendant of the clothesline on pulleys. A variant of this system is employed by the ground floor office staff and is called El Clip. Paper traffic destined for the main office above provides passers-by along Governor's Parade with a source of amusement and paper rain should the clip ever give way. Photographers don't like to be photographed. That's why Orlando Charveto rushes out to a job. But another familiar figure crosses the library gardens in the hope that he might be spared the TV interview. He was caught in the act and put in the hot seat. Slim Simpson. His pictures speak louder than words, but his picture captions have also earned him respect in equal measures.
I joined as a relief sub-editor, staff photographer, on July the 26th, 1956, a Sunday, because the paper was done on a Sunday night for Monday then.
Has the time gone quickly?
Yeah, very quick. Too quickly.
Too quickly.
Yeah. The next 50 years will be over in no time at all, I think.
How much does a picture have to inspire you in order for you to caption it with your particular brand of dry irony?
Really, you see the caption before you take the picture. In fact, the late Bill Godwin always said, if you can't see the caption there, it's a waste of time taking a picture. I mean, or sometimes you see it and you know there's something there, so you take it. But it's things you see. You just if you're in that mood and you see that thing, well, you keep coming across them.
Does the picture always have to come first, or is it the issues that provoke your pen and then perhaps you look for the picture?
Well, it depends. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do, I don't go around looking for piles of rubbish or something that's wrong. The things that people come and tell me, but I think the clamping is an issue which has been highlighted today. I mean, there's a lot of people's backs up. I think it's 50-50 really.
People perhaps might ring you up and give you a tip to take a picture of a particular thing that they've seen, but not necessarily with the view.
People phone me up more than the cleansing department.
Right. Has the role of the photojournalist changed much since those days?
I think in those days it cost a lot of money to put pictures in the paper, whereas now, I mean, it's the same with offset. Doesn't really make any difference. So in those days, you'd probably do a longer story with one picture, and it would have to be important to get the picture in. Well, now, I mean, you can have 2 or 3 pictures, so it probably, but the role, no, I wouldn't say the role has changed really.
What is, perhaps, if you remember, your most traveled photograph? Your one personal scoop that has done perhaps?
I don't think personal scoops come a lot to people actually on paper. I think scoops tend to go more to an amateur who happens to be lucky to just be the most travelled. I don't know. It's difficult to. Ah, there was a John Lennon and Yoko
When they got
wedding, but I
married.
was very lucky because the pilot who brought them, he died some years ago, but Trev Coperston, he and I were young apprentices in the Air Force together, and he went aircrew, and he brought Lord George Thompson, remember he came for the Constitution Court, he brought him out just after he got out of being held in Algiers after a hijack. And the next thing I knew, he sort of said, I've got John and Yoko here, and there was only 3 of us there, so we're very lucky.
That was your particular scoop.
That was a very good one, yeah.
Well-travelled photograph.
Yeah, I think there was John Shepherd, myself, and I think a chap called Nutt, who was a friend of theirs. And I remember asking John Lennon, why did you come to Gibraltar to get married? And it's warm, it's nice and it's friendly.
That balance, basically, after a time, it looks after itself. But you're right, it does involve a lot of juggling about. I mean, there are, more often than not, what was going to be the front page story at 4 o'clock in the afternoon ends up being somewhere on the back page or inside page 2. And there have been 3 other possible lead stories since then. Again, there are days when nothing happens, right? And that first story just makes it into the lead position without any sort of competition.
There's always material, for instance, there's a lot of events in Gibraltar, charity events and so forth, there's photographs, and sometimes they get held back because of space. Again, you've got to distribute what you've got inside, you can't have everything the same, so you don't have 20 pictures of a charity all on one day. So some things go into a queue system, if you like. We have obviously letters, for instance, which sometimes flow more greatly than other times. At the moment, elections are coming, a lot of people are writing letters, so they get staggered back and they get, we know from one day to the next that we have letters. But obviously the printing works is busy, there's a limit to how much the typesetters can set, so a lot of stuff gets processed on a daily basis and other stuff gets thrown away. I mean, we call in news through the modem system from Britain, and maybe half of it gets thrown away, edited down, cut down to very little.
I mean, I think we're doing well at the moment. I mean, we are catering for what Gibraltar wants, which is a daily newspaper, which offers the daily news. So I mean, I think that's where we have to carry on along that line. And I mean, if anything, I would like to see the newspaper side of the operation perhaps expanding within the firm, and perhaps more pages, and perhaps at sometime in the future more specializations, perhaps maybe a cultural supplement. I mean, these things are there, but who knows?
Who knows indeed? Well, one thing that Paco didn't tell us in the interview was that he would like the cultural stories and the human stories to beat the political stories to the headlines. But that is a long way away yet.
What people look to a newspaper like the Chronicle for is official confirmation, if you like, of the facts. That is, we try to say what we publish is something that people can actually rely on, rather than all the different stories that they hear around town. And certainly, what starts off as a fire in a hotel can end up as food poisoning in a restaurant somewhere. People don't always have the story straight. Our role, I think, is to try and get the story as straight as possible. And when there are serious issues, whether it's in court or in the House of Assembly, to try and cover it and keep people generally informed. It's also, I think, what I call the pinboard of our democracy. It is that it allows people to send their letters in and say what they think, and we give more leeway than maybe a national paper would. Basically, if the letter is not libelous, and we take the responsibility for the letters, we try to let people have their say. And as you know, we have some regular correspondents who are almost part of political life in Gibraltar, but we can't distract that we're not, it's not the same as a town of 30,000 people anywhere else. Gib is unique, and we're part of that. The fact that we've gone from 4 to 20 or 24 really shows you that we've been able to catch, if you like, a period of growth generally in Gibraltar, which has also allowed us to provide a paper which has a lot more services in it. I think actually, ironically, the size of the paper is a lot partly due to the fact that you've got so much satellite TV, which is that people have so much choice on the screens that they then turn to a newspaper and they can relax and read a newspaper. You can do your crossword, and if you don't want to read a story in a newspaper, you don't have to read it. If you're watching the television and something comes up which you just don't want to know, you really have to make an effort to switch it off. And I think, you know, newspapers have a permanent place. As for size, I think, for instance, if the finance centre gets to take off as potential would allow it to, obviously there'd be an opportunity for the paper to move wider in that direction, to provide another service, and obviously part of our service must be educating people into different things that are going on. For instance, I mean, the internet is something that's very new to Gibraltar, but we will try as far as possible to have articles that create interest in it, because obviously the world is moving that way, and we'll try and fit in with that.
We hope to grow with Gibraltar. We hope Gibraltar grows commercially too, in a way which will make it easy for us to develop as well.
But the readership base perhaps is not going to grow that much in Gibraltar, is it?
The readership base can grow in Gibraltar depending on how Gibraltar grows commercially as well. I think that certainly what can grow for us is the readership base in Spain, with as an English language newspaper in a part of the world where there's a lot of English presence. You know, UK expats obviously live there in sufficient numbers for us to be able to progress, and businesses that run by English people to progress in that direction. Of course, the way we have always played it is that the main function and role of the newspaper is the Gibraltar Chronicle, and what we've seen is that if we have 24 pages instead of 4 now, 16 of those pages are devoted to Gibraltar, and perhaps 2 or 3 to the Costa.
By the time that City Talk gives way to Newswatch in a few moments, tomorrow's Chronicle and most of Monday's is rolling off the presses. That's how a daily paper is. And let's be honest, no small town of 30,000 can easily boast of having a serious daily with such a distinguished history as the Gibraltar Chronicle. As colleagues and competitors of this noble establishment, we eagerly await, along with all of Gibraltar, the invitations to celebrate with them their 200th birthday in 2001.